So this is my Canyon Strive on. I like the demo bike so much when I made the video that I actually bought this with my own money. So this is my own, it's not a demo or a test, but there are quite a few bits from brands that I'm testing out on the bike. So I'll show you around it in a little bit more detail. So the bike's got 170 fork travel and 160 mil of rear wheel travel. It's actually quite slack. It's 63.5 degrees. Using my little angle measurer though, it measured around 62.8. I don't know how accurate that measure is, but I do measure all bikes with it, and this is on the slacker side. So that makes it very stable going downhill. It feels like a mini downhill bike. It's a mullet, so 29 at the front and 27.5 at the rear. It's full carbon. This mid-spec one's about £6,700, and you can pay an additional £200 to get the bigger battery. So I think all in, it is a really good buy for 2023-24. It's got the Bosch motor, 750 battery that is removable, and it just rides really, really sweet. It is one of my favorite handling bikes of all time, to be completely honest with you. And I know I say that a lot, but every single bike is getting better than the last one. It's marginal gains, but they are getting better and better over time. So no doubt the 2024 version will be better and the 25 version. Not massive, but they do keep progressing. So what do those numbers actually mean? Well, a slacker head angle basically chucks the wheel out further in front. It rakes the bike out a little bit. So I find on most terrain, it feels more stable. There is a little bit more flop as you're going along in a straight line where it kind of wants to just tip in. But in my experience, that is a good trade-off to have, because I'd rather have the outright speed and stability that you get from a slack head angle rather than something that's a little bit twitchy and a little bit faster steering. Personal preference, but even riding more mellow trails, I do find a slacker head angle preferable, because for sure you can still ride it on flat and more mellow trails, but if you try and do the reverse, which is ride a bike with a steep head angle on steeper trails, it feels really twitchy and quite nervous. So this slack 63-degree head angle is a real sweet spot. I love how this bike rides with that setup. Now, I normally say in my videos that I'm more of a fan of 29-29. Now, I've been trying to work out why that in this mullet format, it rides really well. And I think it's because the chainstay is not so short. What tends to happen on e-bikes that go mullet is they bring the rear wheel all the way in and make a really short chainstay. And at 6'3", I find them quite unbalanced when the chainstays are really short. But this mullet, the chainstay is not that short. In fact, it's kind of in line with like a Trek Rail 29-29er. And it feels way more balanced, but I still get the benefit of the smaller rear wheel that tucks in, seems to carve in. And I do notice I can get really far over the back of the bike when it gets really steep. So I'm finding the benefits of the mullet on this e-bike. So yeah, maybe I am converted to mullet now. Now I've found a bike in the geometry that works for me. Talking about bike geometry and sizing, I actually sized down on this. This is a size large. The reach is still around 500 mil reach. The XL is pretty massive. I don't really go too much on what manufacturers tag their bikes as in sizing, because if you look at the size chart, you'll think a large is massive when actually it is, but just go on the geometry, just go on those numbers. They are the best indication of the right size for you. So although I normally ride an XL, I'm finding that I can size down on e-bikes because slack head angles, long wheelbases, low center of gravity, and the weight being slung low means they're inherently stable. Now, my other bike that I'm riding this year is the Pole Voima. That's a 190 and 29-29 travel, and that outright speed is so quick. This can't quite match that in outright speed, but I think this corners quicker and is easier to move around on the trails. So out the front, there is a Fox factory fork, Fox factory 38 in 170. Previously, I've used the E-tuned versions of this fork, and I've been really vocal about how well they perform. This is not the E-tuned version, and I've got to say, I actually really like this one too. It doesn't feel quite as supple off the top. The E-tuned is a little bit more sensitive, but I find when you're riding a little bit harder, this feels like it's a little bit more sure-footed, I would say, whereas the E-tuned can feel a little bit more vague. So whilst the E-tuned is still an amazing fork, and I would not say no to one at all, I think if I was buying now, I would go for the regular Fox factory over the E-tuned. But I think you can feel the edge of the grip a little bit better with the regular fork. It's not quite so vague It just feels a little bit sharper, but I actually think it's something that I prefer now, having pretty much back-to-back tested them both. I've actually got 3 of these forks, 2 of the E-tuned, and this is the first one that I've had in a while that's not the E-tuned, and this is my preference now. Wheels and tyres. First of all, this tyre, the Specialized Cannibal T9 Grid Gravity, is brilliant. It's about 1.35 kilos. It's not a lightweight, but on an e-bike, I don't care as much. It's the T9 rubber, which is pretty sticky. The carcass is nice and thick. It's a pretty beefy, burly tyre. The grip is outstanding. And the best thing is the price. They're 50 quid. And actually Specialized seem to always be offering 10% off their website. So these are £45 a tyre. Maxxis Assegais are really good too. They're £85. So this is like almost half the price of an Assegai. And I think this is just as good. The tread pattern is perfect for an e-bike. I run it on the front and the rear. It's not massive in terms of the blocks, but they're widely spaced. Now I think the Max Grip is slightly softer, but I also think that the Max Grip is a little bit draggier. This to me seems like almost a Max Grip, but the construction seems burlier and beefier than a double down. Maybe almost a downhill if we're comparing it to Maxxis. But I will continue to run these as much as I can actually get them. They keep going in and out of stock on Specialized website, but these are brilliant 2.4 beefy burly e-bike tyres. I run the 29er on the front and the same in a mullet, a 27.5 on the rear. If you can get these, I highly recommend them. I bought them on a Kenevo. I like them so much I bought another set for this bike here. So the Specialized Cannibal T9 Grid Gravity is a sweet tyre for an e-bike. And there's tons of grip for braking and also climbing. I think the DHR 2 on the rear of these bikes, I think they're a little bit outgunned on an e-bike, especially for climbing. I think you should have something beefier and burlier than that DHR 2, which is a great common tyre for regular pedal enduro bikes, but I find on an e-bike, just get the beefiest tyre you can get away with, and that will get you up some ridiculously steep climbs. And this tread pattern is great for braking and climbing grip and outright cornering speed and grip. And my wheels, DT Swiss kindly supplied a test set of the HXC 1501s. It's taken loads of abuse. It came from my Trek rail, and DT supplied me with a mullet version of the same wheel. What I do find is I think I need a hub that's faster engaging. The one on the rear I think is a 36 tooth, and I do find there are some sections when I'm climbing, some more of the technical climbs, where I'm giving it that kind of ratchet thing on the rear, that I would like something faster engaging. And I'll show you why. Check this out. There's a bit of float in there. There's a few degrees of engagement points in the Bosch motor. And when you pair that up with the hub on the rear, if you're kind of out of sync, you get a lot of float on there. Beginning point of the hub and the beginning point of the motor, when you're doing a bit of technical climbing, or you just want to kind of ratchet the pedals, sometimes you have to push the pedal quite a lot before the rear hub and the motor engage. And I'm thinking if I had a faster engaging rear hub, that would eradicate that a little bit. There would still be some play in the Bosch motor because that's inherent in this motor, but I think I want to try and reduce that a little bit. So I'm going to try and get one of the faster engaging rear hubs for this DT Swiss 240 rear hub. That's the only thing that I would like to improve with the wheel set. Now the wheel performance other than that has been fantastic. I've done no truing at all and these have been beaten. The front had a week in Finale Ligure. The rear has been all around the south of the UK and been pummeled and got loads of like scratches and rock marks on it, but they've not needed adjusting or truing or anything done to them. Carbon rims just tend to last really well without you having to do anything until you actually crack them. Touch wood, I haven't done that yet, and I hope I don't, but these carbon rims from DT Swiss, they are expensive, but the performance has been really good. I just need to get a faster engaging rear hub. So the Fox X2 factory, I know a lot of people have had certain issues with this shock, blowing up and not lasting long at all, myself included. I've actually had 2 that I've had to send back and get rebuilt. However, I spoke to Fox recently. They've got slightly beefed up internals on the 2024 models, and they say that this 2024 internal X2 is much more reliable. Now, if you've had your shock rebuilt recently, it's very likely that they've replaced it with some of the 2024 internals anyway. I'll pop a link down below. in the description with the changes that they've made. It's kind of like a stealthy, silent update. I think it's one of those things where, you know, a lot of brands don't like to admit that there's been performance issues or reliability issues, so it's not something they're really shouting about. But the proof will be how long this shot lasts without needing to be rebuilt, because the performance of the X2 is really good. I think it's a very, very strong performer in terms of like the sensitivity that you get. Less faffing around because it's an air shock. You don't have to keep buying coils, and coils are great, but the setup of these is so much easier, and this gives me a very coil-like performance off the top, and there's loads of progressivity due to the nature of it. You can pop tokens in it, which I have got a couple of tokens in it as well. So the 2024 Fox X2 has been a brilliant performer, and partnered with the suspension kinematic of this bike, it just works really well. We'll see how long it lasts. I'll do an update at the end of the season, and if it's lasted that, I'll let you know. So cockpit, really personal, 50mm Title aluminium bar, 31.8. Don't need any really stiff 35 bars, I don't think anyway. I don't see any performance benefits from them, so a 31.8 works perfect. I like to have nice high stack. I'm 6'3", 190 centimeters. So I've got a 50mm rise bar, and I find it nice and high. I can get lots of leverage when the bike's pointing down. I'm not like perched really far forward or pulled forward over the bike, so 50mm rise. These are SDG thrice grips. They've got 3 different patterns on the rubber on there. Nice and grippy, fairly thick. The Hope Tech 4 V4 brakes are phenomenal, by the way. They are immensely powerful, and the lever feel is great. You get loads of modulation in there. And when I first got them, I thought, actually, they feel a bit spongy. But when I rode the bike, I learned that that sponginess is actually modulation. So you're going down a steep descent, give it a bit, feel it bite, think, actually, I need to slow down more, pull it a bit more, pull it a bit more. You've got loads of modulation. I've been previously a fan of the Code RSCs and the Shimano XTs XTR. Both of them are quite on-off, and you don't get a huge amount of feeling once they're on. You just pull tighter and they seem to kind of give you a little bit more performance. But these Hopes are incredibly sensitive to your finger input and give you an immense amount of braking power. Now, there's a brake out that I've never ridden, which is the Maxima brake, which is about £1,000 or €1,000. But people that have ridden both say that these Hopes are 90% of the performance, but about 50% of the cost. Now, I'll take that. If these are giving great bang for buck, then yeah, fantastic. But these are brilliant brakes. They look great. They perform amazing, and I think I will put these on every single e-bike until I find something that is the same performance but cheaper, or maybe better than these. But for now, these are fantastic, and I really do recommend these. I wasn't a massive fan of the old Hopes. I thought that they were underpowered, but the Tech 4 V4s are monstrously powerful and are brilliant. Now, my riding buddies will tell you, I used to be that guy that was always asking for tools and support when I got a flat or needed to adjust my bars or anything, but now I'm the one that's got all the stuff on the bike. This is the EDC Tool. You get a little multi-tool in there, and super handy for multi-tool things. Tyre lever as part of the tool holder. Chain breaker in there as well, and spare quick links that are stashed in here. And the other thing that I carry in here, there's a little capsule at the bottom. There is a tyre plugger in there, and also the tyre plugger strips in there as well. So all of this is just a very neat, stashed kind of tool, really handy part section that just all of this stuff that you're gonna need at some point. I use this tool almost every ride. I always find there's something that I need to adjust or tighten up a little bit. And these are invaluable things. And it just goes straight into the steerer tube, pops down, and is accessible anytime you need it. Use products like these to really help you on your ride, especially if you're riding solo. There's nothing worse than being caught out in the middle of nowhere with a punch out or needing to adjust something and you just haven't got the stuff on you. Now, I have used this twice since I've had the bike to get me out of a sticky situation, also known as a flat. One on my bike, a pinch flat, and one on a mate's bike. So what you see is what you get. It is a pump, but it's very small. It's pretty lightweight, but it's high volume. So each of these strokes actually puts a decent amount of air into the bike. Not only that, but also if you need that quick shot, blast of air, there is a CO2 can that stashes neatly into the pump as well. You can also fit that multi-tool into this pump if you just wanted to take the pump and a multi-tool, but I like to have the tool and the pump and the CO2. This pump is also really easy to use. You just slam that onto the valve and start pumping. If you need to use the actual CO2 inflator, this valve head pulls off and you just screw it into the end of that, and then you blast up the tyre with the CO2. So basically with these two bits, the multi-tool and the pump and the plugger kit, all of that stuff means that virtually every ride and every outcome, I have some way of at least getting home. This just kind of pops onto the bottle mount and just sits offset to one side, but there's still space for the bottle. Doesn't get in the way at all. It's a little bit of extra weight, but it means that I don't have to take any packs. I rarely take a kind of backpack or any kind of hip pack. I just like to have everything on the bike. The water bottle, the tools, the pump, the CO2, everything is stashed on the bike. And it means I don't have to worry about picking anything up or sticking it all on a backpack. Basically, every time I ride this bike, it's ready to rip and it's ready to get me out of most situations. The only thing I don't take is a tube, because with these tyres, they are pretty burly. And I found that even when I've punctured it, I've managed to put a plug in it and it's managed to seal absolutely fine. I've got PE sealant and the PE's valves on there. And in my experience, that sealant is brilliant. And the valves are easy to pump up as well afterwards. Completing the stuff from 1UP is this 1UP dropper 210. I think the bang for buck, the value for money on these 1UP droppers is unbeatable. The dropper quality is really good. It's pretty lightweight and the action on the dropper lever is really decent. I struggle really to find anything wrong with it. The price to performance ratio is really good. The stack height is really low, so you get maximum amount of drop from it. The price is good. The lever's good, the action's good, it feels decent, and yeah, I just have used these on 3 bikes now, and I think they are the best in terms of the price to performance ratio, the quality of them. Don't really think you can go wrong with these 1UP droppers. They're a really decent bit of kit. So let's talk drivetrain. This is SRAM's transmission, 12-speed. The new stuff, this is the XO derailleur. I'm using the XO cassette. I'm actually using the XX chainring and the XX chain, just a bit of a mishmash of those components. Now, how good a performer is this? Shifting under load is brilliant. I made a video on this and it is really decent in terms of the shifting performance and the shifting quality. How indestructible is it? Well, I've actually broken one now. I actually broke the cage. I bent the cage and I hit a stump and it bent outwards, so it was unable to take the impact in. So I had to get just the new cage, and it was about 80 or 100 pounds. I can't remember exactly how much it was. But this is not indestructible. It is tough, but it is not indestructible. The cage was bent too far. Now, you can buy the cage pieces separately, but they weren't yet available, so I had to buy the entire cage and the pulley wheels. And that's why the cost was a little bit more than usual. I do believe you can replace both the parts of the cage, and I could have salvaged the rest of the stuff that was in there. Now, it was a little bit frustrating. The bike still did shift, but you know what it's like with a bent cage. It was just kind of grinding and not working perfectly. So it's not indestructible, but the performance of this drivetrain is brilliant. Now, I am using a wire that goes from the derailleur into the motor, and it gets its power from the motor, because I do forget to charge these little SRAM batteries. This makes it much easier. I don't ever have to remember to charge the battery. If you've got a massive battery in the bike, I think it just makes sense to take the power from that. It's quite discreet, runs under the derailleur into the chainstay. And yeah, never ever have to worry about charging that Axis battery ever again. Check out these crank arms. They're carbon crank arms from Raceface. They're called Raceface Era. They come with a lifetime warranty. So if you break them, actually they're guaranteed. They will replace them. Even if you crash, which I think is pretty awesome, pretty much unheard of, maybe, for carbon stuff. Yeah, lifetime warranty. They're 160 in crank length. They've got this little aluminium scuff plate on there to keep the carbon nice and fresh, and pretty lightweight, although on an e-bike, I'm not quite sure that weight really matters, but stiffness and strength certainly do. These were sent by Raceface as a test item. I just like the 160 crank arm length anyway. I think that you get nice clearance over rocks and debris and that kind of stuff. Now, in this build, the bike weighs about 23.3 kilos without pedals, in size large. That's with a big 750 battery. So a couple of other things to point out. This is a little pad. It's actually a nuke-proof pad. I'll pop the links in the description for this. This is a it stops all the stones and debris hitting the down tube and making noise, because the down tube actually is really fat on this bike. It's not the most visually aesthetically pleasing, I don't think. I also put some mastic on the underneath of the chainstay just to stop with the chain slap noise and dirt and debris and that kind of stuff flicking up and hitting the bike. SDG Bel Air 3 saddle is an e-bike saddle, and it's slightly kinked at the back to give you a bit of like an arse shelf when you're going up the steep stuff. Just gives you a bit more support, a bit more grip over the back wheel. So the battery just slides straight out here. Take this plate off with one screw and the battery just pulls straight out. You can run either a 750 or a 625 in there. I'm running the 750, really good range. I can get about 1900 meters of elevation using a mixture of auto mode, EMTB mode and turbo. I basically don't ever use eco, just find that mode rubbish. Yeah, so just under 2000 meters of elevation, which is really decent, and I'm absolutely toast after doing 1900 meters of elevation and like riding back down as fast as I can. I've just noticed under here there's these little bottle mounts, and you can put tools under there. Like you can mount a little multi-tool under there if you wanted to. But I really love this bike. The rear suspension is lovely and agile and playful. The quality of the ride is fantastic, and mullet just works beautifully well. So it is actually running internal headset cable routing, which I don't mind at all. I built this bike and it does not bother me, and I know a lot of people prefer it to be externally routed, but when it comes to actually having to service it and change that bearing, which shouldn't be for quite a while, then I'll just probably bleed the brakes at the same time, and then that's it, job done. And look how clean it looks. Just one brake cable, brake hose, and then the dropper and the rear going into the headset, and it just gives this super clean silhouette. It's yeah, really minimalist out the front. But the bike technology keeps improving. Everything keeps getting better. The tide is rising, and no doubt at the end of 23, beginning of 24, we're going to see even more stuff. What I would love with this one here is to be able to run Bosch's new PowerMore battery without the 750 battery and just the PowerMore. So that's just the 250 watt hour kind of range extender battery. That would save almost 3 kilos of weight for just those 1 hour lunchtime blasts or evening rides. You could get almost an SL bike out of this by ditching that 750 and just riding with the PowerMore. I think that would be a brilliant experiment. I'm going to try and do that, because I'm not all the time am I going out doing really long rides. Sometimes I just want a 45-minute to 1 hour quick fix of e-biking, and that's enough. So I'm going to experiment with the lighter batteries. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want to be the first to see all my new e-bike stuff, and I'll catch you soon.